That night, after my mother's memorial service at a small church in Santa Monica, I returned to our penthouse apartment with heavy feet and an empty heart. The murmurs, condolences, and polite hugs still clung to me like a thin layer of smoke. I just wanted to take off the black dress, wash off my makeup, and bury my face in a pillow without forcing another smile. But fate wasn't done with me. As I stepped into the bedroom, the soft glow of the nightlight cast long shadows on the ivory wall. Tyler's iPad, my husband's, sat carelessly on the nightstand. A notification lit up the screen. Can't stop thinking about last night, same time tomorrow? I froze. My mind hadn't caught up yet. The grief from my mother's service was still raw, yet my eyes locked onto the screen like they'd been hypnotized. I unlocked the device without hesitation. Within seconds, everything I had believed in began to shatter. Messages, photos, hotel bookings, and steamy exchanges unmistakably between Tyler and someone named Rachel, who I quickly recognized as the new intern at his firm. She was only 24. I collapsed beside the bed, my palms ice cold. The irony was cruel. While I had been falling apart over my mother's death, my husband was checking into hotels in Beverly Hills with a girl young enough to be her granddaughter. I didn't cry. Maybe I had already run out of tears after 3 months of watching Mom fade away. What remained was a deep, aching silence and a simmering fury, like molten lava beneath the cracked mask of composure. Tyler and I met during my final year at UCLA Law. He was 8 years older, a teaching assistant with a warm smile and listening eyes. 14 years together, 6 years married, 3 failed rounds of IVF, and dozens of hormone injections that left my stomach swollen and bruised. I thought we were a team, a family waiting on a miracle. Turns out, the miracle he wanted was happening in someone else's bed. I remembered the familiar lines. Just a late meeting. She's new, I'm mentoring her. Each one now slapped me across memories I once cherished. The emergency trips, the late gym sessions, all forming a perfectly calculated lie. Tyler hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He betrayed every drop of sweat I shed trying to hold our life together. Most people imagine that women find out through confessions or dramatic confrontations. Not me. I found out in silence, no screaming, no warnings. Just one message. And my whole world caved in. I locked the iPad and placed it neatly back. My hands trembled, but I kept my breathing steady. My mother used to say, if you can't trust anyone else, at least trust yourself. And in that moment I knew, I wouldn't beg, and I wouldn't plead. Tyler had no idea the woman he once called wife had just been reborn, out of darkness, betrayal, and the ashes of an old life. I spent the rest of that night on the floor of my office, the desk lamp casting light onto the worn-out rug. On my computer screen, I created a new folder, The Truth. Inside it, I saved every screenshot of the messages between Tyler and Rachel, arranged chronologically. From the flirty beginnings to coded references I guessed were nicknames for hotel meetups. I traced each location. Marriott Santa Monica, the Peninsula, even the resort I had once planned for our anniversary. Used by them before I even told Tyler about the idea. I reopened Tyler's old work email, still accessible from when he asked me to help fix his calendar. There I found hotel invoices attached to expense reports, casually labeled as prospective client meetings. That client wore tight dresses and called my husband Ty Bear. Disgusting. I didn't think of Rachel as the other woman. She was just a tool Tyler used to fill the void he himself created. I wasn't going to fight over him. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to plan. The next morning, I reached out to an old friend, Joanna Reeves, now a private investigator specializing in financial misconduct. We had gone to law school together, but she'd taken a different path, chasing the truth quietly and with precision I never imagined possible. We met at a small cafe in Pacific Palisades. I told her everything without flinching. Joanna listened silently, flipping through a black leather notebook. Amelia, she said once I finished, you don't just want to catch your husband cheating, you want to bury his reputation. I looked her straight in the eyes. I want justice. 4 days later, Joanna handed me a file so thick I had to open it twice to believe it was real. Hotel booking history through the company account. Dinner receipts marked as investor meetings. That included only 2 entrees. One vegetarian, the other champagne and scallops. Vehicle reports showed Tyler had driven the office Lexus to Malibu at least 8 times in 2 months, coincidentally the same days I sat in the IVF clinic alone. I didn't need proof of the affair. I needed proof that he abused company resources and his position of power for personal gain. And now, I had everything. But the biggest surprise came from Tyler's own desk drawer, where he kept a silver USB stick with no label. I found it while he was out on yet another partner meeting that Wednesday. What did it contain? Internal market expansion plans Tyler wasn't authorized to possess, scanned merger contracts with a real estate investment firm, and a list of employees marked for upcoming layoffs, none of which had been officially disclosed. I copied everything onto a separate drive, then placed it all back exactly as it was, untouched. Proof of abuse of power, corporate deception, and violation of security policies. I didn't intend to report it unless he forced my hand. Now I needed a stage. Through a former colleague of Tyler's from the marketing department, I found out that his company, Lennox and Rudd, was holding their quarterly strategic meeting the following Thursday morning, on the 19th floor of their Century City headquarters. All department heads, legal representatives, and the board would be present. One interesting detail, Tyler wouldn't attend, he had a personal client meeting. I assumed with Rachel. I just needed to make sure she'd be there. I called the office with a calm tone. Hi, I'm Mr. Mitchell, Tyler's assistant. He's overseeing the new marketing campaign and has requested that intern Rachel Peterson present the user feedback data at the upcoming meeting. The secretary hesitated, but after I emphasized this was a special request from Mr. Tyler, she agreed. Rachel would be there, Tyler would not. As for me, I would arrive right on time with 2 carefully packed suitcases and the calm resolve of a woman who had shed her illusions, but not her strength. I used to think infidelity was the worst blow in a marriage. I was wrong. There's something worse than cheating, greed, and betrayal of trust in business. Joanna hadn't just given me files on secret getaways and shady expenses. She showed me a side of Tyler I had never seen before, a man orchestrating fraud. Turns out his relationship with Rachel wasn't just about office rendezvous. It was part of a bigger scheme, funneling money from the main company into a shell company co-owned by Tyler and someone named Kyle Brennan, the new CFO. Rachel, naturally, was compensated with designer handbags, luxury trips, and a fancy consulting role, with no job description. It took me nearly 2 weeks to map the money trail. Everything was covered up neatly. A company called Vector Synthesis received strategic investments from Lennox and Rudd, which were then filtered through fake contracts to mask the movement. Joanna's expression hardened. Tyler didn't just betray you, she said. He's using his company like an ATM. I met her gaze. I'm not just taking his wife from him. I wanted him to lose everything. I began reaching out to the people Tyler had dismissed or pushed aside. First on the list was Ethan Caldwell, a major investor Tyler had publicly humiliated during last year's shareholders meeting. I'd met Ethan once at a legal conference. When I asked for a meeting, he responded immediately. We met in his downtown LA office. Every detail, from the abstract painting on the wall to the espresso he brewed himself, reflected precision. I'm guessing this isn't about a contract clause this time, he said with a wry smile. I placed the file on his desk, said nothing. After skimming for 10 minutes, his demeanor changed. How long has he been doing this? Ethan asked, voice colder now. I'm not sure, I replied, but if I uncovered this much, I'm certain the SEC could uncover more. He leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving the documents. What do you need from me? I need your signature on an updated corporate charter, I said. There's a new clause, allowing shareholders to remove the CEO if there's evidence of ethical or financial misconduct. I paused. And I need your help getting Tyler to sign it. Ethan pressed his lips into a line. He won't read it, not if he thinks it's just routine governance. I met his gaze steadily. Exactly. The next evening, I sent Tyler an email with an attachment labeled Governance Update, requested by legal. I used the email address of the former head of legal who had resigned 2 months earlier, an account I still had access to from a past IT favor. Tyler replied bluntly, Okay. Sign and return tomorrow. When the signed PDF hit my inbox, I printed 2 certified copies and sent them to the law office representing the shareholders. I was ready. Rachel still thought she'd be introduced as a promising young talent at the quarterly review. I knew this because Joanna had recorded a call between her and Tyler. Tomorrow I won't be there, he said, but they'll see how important you are to the campaign. She was important, all right, just not in the way she imagined. The next morning I woke early and dressed in a high-collared black blazer, a pencil skirt and beige heels. Nothing flashy, just enough to ensure they remembered me as the woman who didn't flinch while cleaning up someone else's mess. I placed both suitcases in the trunk. One held Tyler's personal items, the things he cared most about. The other contained evidence of financial misconduct, neatly printed and highlighted. When I entered the main lobby of Lennox and Rudd, the front desk staff greeted me by name. I offered a polite smile. Just delivering some materials to the boardroom. No one asked questions. The elevator carried me to the 19th floor. As the doors opened, I saw the sign. Quarterly Strategic Review, Boardroom A. Voices murmured from within. I stepped forward, gripped the suitcase handles firmly, and drew a steady breath. The stage was set. All I had to do was begin the final act. I stepped out of the elevator at exactly 8:30 a.m. The 19th floor of Lennox and Rudd was quiet as a library. The only sound came from the large boardroom at the end of the corridor. Room A, a sign outside read, Quarterly Strategic Review, Executive Attendance Required. I tightened my grip on the handles of the 2 suitcases. One a deep navy, the other a sleek silver. They rolled silently over the thick carpet, making no sound, but I knew the real crash was coming. From me, not from the wheels. I stopped in front of the large glass doors. Inside, a row of people sat in a formal line, the glow of the projector casting sharp shadows across their serious faces. At the center of the screen was Rachel. She wore a tailored white blouse, loose curls cascading down her shoulders, standing confidently near the head of the table. She was enthusiastically presenting user engagement metrics from the latest media campaign, remote in one hand, the other gesturing fluidly at the graphs. As if she were born to do this. It was perfect, a golden moment. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Silence swept through the room. All eyes turned to me, a woman in a black blazer, deep red lipstick, and a clear, resolute gaze. Behind me, the 2 suitcases rolled quietly into the light. Rachel froze mid-sentence. She stared at me, then at the luggage, then back at me, as if her brain couldn't process what was happening fast enough. I stepped forward slowly, stopping right across from her. "Good morning," I said calmly, as if opening a standard legal briefing. "I'm Amelia Carter, the wife, or rather soon-to-be ex-wife, of Tyler Mitchell." A low murmur rippled around the table. I turned toward Rachel, giving her a faint, knowing smile. "I believe you're familiar with these items." I rolled the silver suitcase forward and unlatched it gently. Inside, perfectly folded, were Tyler's belongings. Tailored jackets, silk ties, his favorite watch, and a still-tagged bottle of Tom Ford cologne. I picked up a white Zegna dress shirt, one Tyler always sent for dry cleaning separately, and casually tossed it on the table in front of Rachel. "People liked wearing this to meetings. You knew that, didn't you?" Rachel stood frozen, gripping the presentation remote so tightly her knuckles turned pale. I continued, eyes still lowered. "And this?" I pulled out a small black velvet box and opened it to reveal a limited edition Omega watch. "Our first anniversary gift. I suppose it suits his new replacement better now." I placed the watch squarely in the center of the table. No one said a word. Then, from the second suitcase, I retrieved a thick document tied neatly with a red ribbon. I brought a few documents. In here is a detailed breakdown of every expense Tyler approved for business trips, where clients never showed up, but Rachel always did, sometimes with spa receipts and seafood dinners to match. Several people around the table began glancing at each other. One man at the far end even coughed, clearly suppressing a smirk. I placed the file in front of the CEO, Mr. Grant Harlan, who stared at me as if waking from a long, uneasy dream. I assume your company has a clear policy about misuse of company funds for personal purposes? I asked, my voice unwavering. Rachel opened her mouth, then closed it. Her cheeks were flushed deep red. Her hand trembled slightly. She turned to Mr. Harlan as if pleading for backup, but he remained still, his eyes locked on the documents. I looked directly at her. You know, I used to think I was a fool for not seeing it sooner. But not anymore. I bent down, pulled out a small black leather pouch, and removed Tyler's prescription bottle. The one for his blood pressure. The one that made him irritable if he skipped even a single dose. I placed it in front of Rachel. He needs one of these every night. I hope you remember if you want to keep him functioning. A muffled laugh escaped from the left side of the table. No one interrupted me. No one told me to stop. I looked around the room, where every gaze was now fixed on me, not with pity but with a mix of awe and stunned respect. I zipped the suitcase shut, smoothed my hair, and smiled. I'll leave my husband's belongings here. They seem to fit better with his new role. And before Rachel could respond, I turned and walked toward the door. I didn't need to say anything else. Their expressions said it all. I had only made it a few steps when Mr. Grant Harlan's voice called out from the head of the table. Miss Carter, please hold on a moment. I turned. He was holding the file I had given him, his eyes sharp and analytical. Next to him was Dana Whitmore, the head of HR, flipping through each page with the steady hands of someone who had dealt with too many internal scandals to be shocked easily. Mr. Harlan looked up, his tone serious. You stated that these documents pertain to misconduct involving misuse of company funds. I tilted my head slightly. And more. I walked slowly toward him and pulled another folder from my handbag. This one marked with neon yellow sticky notes. I've organized it. The first section is hotel bookings charged to Tyler's corporate card. The second is the company's ride history that matches his rendezvous locations with Rachel. The third, I paused, glancing at Rachel, who sat frozen at the corner of the table, includes excerpts of their text messages. In at least 3 of them, Tyler implies she'll get a promotion if she keeps cooperating. Wow. The tension in the conference room shifted into something heavier, stifling. I didn't need to say anything else. The document spoke louder than I ever could. Mr. Harlan turned to Dana. Verify this immediately. Understood. Dana stood up, eyes fixed on Rachel. Ms. Peterson, please come with me to HR. Rachel flinched, opened her mouth as if to object, but no words came. Her face turned pale, mascara streaked, hands clutching the edge of the table until her knuckles turned purple. After a long, shaky pause, she stood and quietly followed Dana out. No one looked her way. No one defended her. I drew in a soft breath and looked straight at the CEO. I apologize for interrupting the meeting, but I believe your company deserves the full truth. This isn't a personal matter anymore. It's about professional ethics, stakeholder trust, and corporate reputation. Mr. Harlan gave a slow, thoughtful look. Do you intend to take this to the authorities? I'm hoping the company handles it internally first, but if things get buried... I left the sentence hanging. He understood. After a beat of silence, he stood and walked around the table, stopping in front of me. You're an attorney, correct? I used to be head of legal at Shoreline Strategies, now I consult independently. Ever considered corporate ethics training? I was caught off guard, but kept my composure. I've taken a few small contracts, but haven't worked with larger firms. He gave a faint smile, something he hadn't done all meeting. Maybe it's time you did. I didn't answer. I hadn't come here looking for career opportunities. I came to end a betrayal and protect the values I still believed in. As I walked out of the conference room, the looks from around the table had shifted. No longer shock or curiosity, but respect. The silver suitcase remained in the middle of the room, a naked symbol of a downfall fully exposed. I had no reason to take it back. What was inside no longer belonged to me. I'd left behind an entire story and every piece of evidence justice might need. On my way out, my phone buzzed. A message from a familiar number. I'm waiting in room 602. Text me when you're done. I smiled faintly, calmly hit forward, sent it to the company's internal ethics email. ethics@lennoxrudd.com, with a note. Seems Mr. Mitchell's urgent business just checked in on time. I was going to let the truth detonate itself. Just as I stepped out of the elevator, my phone rang. His name lit up the screen, Tyler Mitchell, calling at 8:47 a.m., fitting just as Rachel was likely trembling in HR and his suitcase still sat in the middle of the executive boardroom. I wasn't surprised. I picked up, held the phone to my ear and said nothing. "Amelia," his voice came through like ice water down the throat. "Where are you? What's going on with Rachel? Why did she text 'she knows everything' and then disappear?" I kept my voice soft as silk, sharp as glass. "You should ask yourself, Tyler, because everything I know came from the two of you." Silence on the other end, just for a beat. Then his tone dropped, lower, harder, edged with threat. "What did you do?" I turned back down the long hallway, heading toward the glass doors that opened to the high-rising balcony. Los Angeles glowed below, but all I heard was the breath of a man who once swore never to lie to me. "This isn't over, Amelia," he growled. "If you're trying to humiliate me in front of the company, I won't go easy on you in court. You know the law better than anyone." I laughed softly, not out of mockery, not from sadness, just that calm, steady confidence that comes from holding the final card. "Tyler," I said, "did you forget who wrote our prenup?" He paused. I continued. "It was my draft. Your attorney reviewed it, signed and notarized it. It clearly states, if either party is unfaithful, the other keeps all personal assets acquired before marriage, which means the house in Westward, the investment accounts, the shares in Shoreline Strategies, they're all mine. And you, Tyler Mitchell, don't even get a 2-bedroom condo unless I say so." I heard a sharp inhale on his end, the sound of rage barely contained by whatever pride he had left. "You really think you can destroy my reputation with a few pictures and texts?" "You're right," I replied calmly. "I can't. But the company card charges, the business trips with no clients, the hotel rooms under fake names. Do you think the compliance team will overlook that? And the USB in your drawer? The one with restricted data you weren't authorized to copy? I think legal will find that interesting." He went silent. I breathed evenly, fingers resting on the cold balcony rail. "You lost Rachel, your position and the persona you built. I don't need to do anything else. You made this crumble all by yourself." Then came the line I expected. "You're ruining everything. You'll pay for this." I smiled, this time letting the bitterness show. "Actually, Tyler, I'm just putting everything back where it belongs." I heard him slam his hand on the steering wheel, then the call abruptly ended. No goodbye, no apology. Just the fury of a man who had nothing left to bargain with. I slipped my phone into my purse and stood there for a moment longer. The city kept moving below me, but this time, it no longer weighed on my shoulders. I stepped off the balcony and returned to the grand lobby on the 19th floor. One of the front desk associates recognized me and rushed over, eyes wide. "Mr. Carter, HR asked me to thank you, and Mr. Harlan said whenever you have time, he'd like to schedule a private meeting." I nodded and replied softly, "Thank you. But right now I have more important things to do than look back at the wreckage." Then I walked out of the building, carrying only what truly belonged to me. For once, no one else's weight on my shoulders. News of Tyler's suspension spread through the company in less than 4 hours after the meeting. That evening, the board held an emergency session without Tyler. I wasn't required to attend, but an old friend from legal messaged me. He couldn't argue anything. Your evidence shut the room down. By the next morning, Tyler Mitchell was officially terminated for severe violations of corporate ethics and internal security policy. The email went out company-widely. It didn't name specifics, but everyone knew what had happened. Whispers in the hallway shifted to wary silence. The downfall of a high-ranking figure always leaves aftershocks. Rachel Peterson, the once promising intern, was reassigned to document support, a windowless room with no projects and no future. 3 months later, she quietly left during a routine staff reduction. As for me, I didn't file for divorce right away. I wanted Tyler to sit with the reality that every ounce of control he once had was gone. After being fired, he called me once, not to apologize, but to renegotiate finances. "We loved each other once, Amelia," he said, voice tired. You don't have to take everything from me. I glanced at a photo of my mother on the desk and replied in a tone he no longer recognized. Tyler, you lost everything yourself. I just turned on the light so others could see it. 3 weeks later, the divorce papers were signed, no dispute. The prenuptial agreement stood firm. My personal assets, our Westward home, savings accounts, and pre-marriage investments, were untouched. He left with only his clothes and a leased car with 6 months left on the contract. I sold the Westwood house, a place that once felt like home, but had become a scar. I moved to Silver Lake and bought a modest 2-story home with a balcony full of red geraniums. The kitchen faced east, catching the morning sun. The backyard had just enough space for a small vegetable garden, just like my mother had dreamed of, but never got to plant. I adopted a golden retriever named Rusty. He liked lying at my feet while I worked and barked at strange men near the gate. Not out of anger, but as if to remind me, be careful who you let in, especially if they don't know how to keep your heart safe. Every morning, I woke early, made coffee, and walked Rusty around the lake. I learned to live without syncing my calendar to someone else's, without needing reminders or validation. I read books by the window, let sunlight warm my shoulders, and let my mind rest without unraveling over unspoken questions. One day, while trimming lavender, I received an email from the new leadership at Lennox and Rudd. They wanted me to consult on rebuilding their corporate ethics policies. The new chairman wrote, "We need someone who not only understands the law, but has the courage to enforce it." I sat quietly in front of the screen. Maybe they thought I was a woman who walked out of a broken marriage victorious. But the truth is, I survived because I never lost faith in myself. My new life wasn't loud, but it was honest, and deep enough that I no longer felt hollow when the night settled in. Tyler occasionally came up in distant whispers. Apparently he found a job at a small firm in Oregon with no significant title. Rachel disappeared from all social platforms. I never searched for them, never spoke their names. Because when you keep digging up the past, it's no different than swallowing the very thing that once choked you. 1 year after that fateful meeting, I stood in a corporate auditorium in San Diego, microphone in hand with a giant banner behind me, rebuilding company culture, starting with courage. No one here knew I used to be Mrs. Tyler Mitchell. They only knew me as Amelia Carter, corporate ethics advisor, the woman who helped over a dozen companies mend broken trust systems, establish transparent whistleblowing protocols, and most importantly, give voice back to those who had been silenced. I wasn't there to preach. I was there to tell a story. Not a story of divorce, but of a woman who stood back up when everything crumbled. And used those broken pieces to build something stronger. I never thought I'd become a mother on my own. But after everything, I realized wanting a child wasn't about keeping someone by my side. It was about giving unconditional love in its truest form. I began the adoption process once everything had settled. The paperwork, interviews, psychological evaluations, it was all long and uncomfortable. But for me, nothing was harder than pretending to be okay in a hollow marriage. That February, I was matched with a 6-month-old baby girl in Oregon. Her birth name was Isla. When I arrived at the hospital to bring her home, the nurse placed her in my arms and whispered, "She's unusually calm, as if she's been waiting for the right person." Isla didn't cry. She just opened her eyes and looked at me for a long time. We moved to a small coastal town with an old library, a bakery that smelled like butter every morning, and rows of whispering pine trees all summer long. Rusty, the rescue golden retriever I had adopted, became Isla's best friend. Every afternoon we'd go to the backyard. Isla nestled in her stroller while Rusty stood guard beside her, as if he had taken on the role of big brother without anyone asking. At night I read to her, not fairy tales about princesses waiting to be rescued, but stories about women who built their own worlds from the ashes. Isla will grow up knowing that her mother had failed, had been betrayed, had been dismissed. But more importantly, she'll know her mother didn't stop there. Now, whenever I stand in front of boardrooms filled with people once afraid to speak up, I always end my talk with one simple line. Silence doesn't protect you from harm, but having the courage to speak up protects you from the corruption of silence. I'm not a perfect woman, but I chose not to be forgotten in my own story. No longer the wife making excuses, no longer the woman bowing her head in quiet suffering. I'm the one who rewrote the script, the one who chose the ending, and the one who stood up and kept walking. One early autumn afternoon with Isla asleep in my arms, I sat by the window, watching sunlight spill over a new garden of lavender. I didn't need dazzling success, I didn't need dramatic revenge. I just needed to be myself. Because I understood that an ending isn't a full stop, but a beginning to another story. One where I'm both the author and the heroine. I wasn't writing to hold on to anyone, I was writing to free myself. Amelia's story isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's living proof of the quiet power within a woman who dares to rise and rewrite her life. In the real world, many people are silently carrying wounds. But as Amelia showed us, having the courage to speak up, set new boundaries, and choose what's right, even when it's hard, is the first step to rebirth. No one is required to live as a side character when they were always meant to be the lead. What do you think of Amelia's decision? Would you have done the same if you were in her shoes? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.